don't know if your audience is going to love hearing this, but I landed in HR by accident. In my MBA, my major was in marketing. My minor was in finance.
Wow. And he's gone on to do HR.
Exactly. Which also goes to show the area that really you find your passion, your area of expertise, and you can't really plan for everything in life.
Yeah, you can't.
You got to continue giving it your best shot. And when you're doing a particular qualification or picking up a skill, we feel this is the end point. And if that happens, I'll make it. If that doesn't happen, the world will crash.
Correct.
It doesn't happen like that. Break into a new area, maybe an internship, maybe even pro bono. You have to go a little out of your way to make that shift. It doesn't happen easily.
But it's not impossible.
It's not impossible, for sure. Many people
do it,
including me and before me, after me, have done it. Yes.
Do you even need to mention what your hobbies are in a resume? Let me ask an HR only.
It's not essential, except in junior years, because essentially you don't have much to showcase.
What would you as an HR even get from me telling you these are my hobbies is my question.
So it's this age old ऐसे होता जा रहा है तो ऐसे होते रहेगा वाला किस्सा. But more than that is of course extracurricular achievements is what
you may look
as an HR professional I will be more. Essentially one is trying to look at what we call in HR speak as the cultural fit, right?
Yeah.
And there from a social profile you do get a sense of the candidate, one's worth.
Right.
Again, one of my ex-bosses shared this statement with me and it really stuck with me. The statement is...
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dhairya Decodes podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be joined by an individual who I'm extremely delighted to welcome on the podcast. He's a dear friend, a fellow LinkedIn creator, and also somebody who has been in the HR space for over 20 plus years. He's a thorough through and through seasoned HR professional. His name is Vikas Dua. He's worked across industries, majorly in the HR space, right from IT, healthcare, education, and now in PR, communications, and marketing. Currently, he's the head of people at Weber Shandwick, which is one of the leading communications and marketing companies in the world. And his journey is not just restricted to being a thorough HR professional, but he's also gone on to author a book which is called HR in My Heart, staying true to his HR profession. Apart from that, he creates content on LinkedIn and helps people navigate through their careers. And he is also somebody who is very actively building a couple of communities, supporting organizations like BRICS. And before this, he was working at companies like Wipro, Concentrix, StarTech, and a lot more. In today's episode, we'll decode Vikas's career trajectory, know a bit more about his early career choices, how he got into the profession of HR. We'll also know about some misconceptions that people have about the HR industry. We'll know a lot about hiring, salary negotiations, finding the right jobs, how do these HRs actually hire you guys and you keep struggling, and what and we'll also decode secrets about what are they actually looking for when they're hiring talent. Is there actually a scarcity in the job market, or is it just a thing that we are not aware of, and a lot more. So without any further ado, let me welcome Vikas Dua to the Dhairya Decodes podcast. Hi Vikas.
Hey, thank you Dhairya for having me. Absolute pleasure and the honor is mine.
No, my pleasure Vikas. And I think we've known each other for close to about 3 years or more now.
Correct.
If I'm not wrong, ever since LeeCap began. And for context to the audience, LeeCap was the LinkedIn Creator Accelerator program wherein the top 200 creators on LinkedIn got selected and we both happened to be a part of it. This was in June 2022 and I've known him ever since. It's been wonderful to witness your journey also and see you grow and evolve through so many roles, both in the creator space and professionally, Vikas. But today I want to know a bit more about you, right? Beyond the realm of what I've known. So why don't we start with knowing a little bit about your family background, your early childhood days, and what kind of a family do you come from?
Superb. Happy to share that. But firstly, before we do that, I want to thank you for LeeCap. I'll tell you why.
Why?
I haven't ever told you this, but it was your post. I think you're one of the first selections in that program.
Yeah.
And you happened to post it on LinkedIn.
Correct.
And it was literally, I think, 1 or 2 days before the deadline when you posted.
Right.
And I went that same evening and I shot my video. I wrote my note and I submitted my application.
Oh, lovely.
So my LeeCap happened because of you and I'm really, really grateful to you for that.
No, yeah, this is so sweet. I'm so glad.
It's a fact. I won't lie.
Yes, lovely. Good to know that.
And about my family, well, I've been lucky that way. Dhairya. I was born into a fairly decent middle class family. Grew up in Bombay.
Oh, lovely.
So that city is very cosmopolitan, as you know.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's called Mumbai, but those are the days it was Bombay. And I was born into a family with both parents educated, working professionals. Mom was a teacher in university.
Wow.
Dad was a professional in the IT space.
In the corporate world?
Corporate world.
Nice. Okay.
And a sister, an elder sister, a younger sister. So I was the sandwich
Between
child between
two
the two.
Okay.
So again, because of the parents coming from such educated and forward-thinking kind of mindset, I think grew up in a house full of values, full of equality and encouragement to do whatever we wanted to do. That allowed me to kind of try and find my own interests, read a lot, hung around with folks across different economic strata. You know, the advantage of staying in a city like Bombay is that you get to meet people from different backgrounds, right from, you know, the regular folks to film star kids. And I had a few of those around my apartment. So lovely to get that kind of exposure early in life and to be able to build on that as I grew forward.
Lovely. And because at any point of time, did you feel that because, let's say, your father was already in the, IT domain per se, working in a corporate, your mother obviously was teaching in a university, did that thought ever occur to you, or were they ever, let's say, just suggesting you subtly that probably you should pursue something similar when it came to talks, career talks early on when you grew up? What professions did you see around you, and do you think it had any impact on you thinking this is what I want to become?
So, great question. In fact, you know, that's the beauty of my upbringing in a sense, Dhairya, that my dad was an IITian and or a ranker IITian, right? But at no point was there any pressure that, hey, you have to do IIT. And you never. And I personally did want to at some point. I was very interested in computers and I loved tinkering around in my school's computer lab. But I knew somewhere that I wasn't IIT potential, at least at that stage. And at not once did my parents ever push me down that path and force me to classes and say, no, you have to do it, or, you know, that's the only path forward.
Which is very rare.
Exactly. And that's why, you know, I kind of ended up doing hotel management. In those days, it was hardly a... Yes.
Okay.
So,
when was this?
This was right after my 12th. I'm talking about...
So you immediately took it up then?
Correct. My graduation was in hotel management. Nice. And there also, interesting story that it was my elder sister who kind of inspired me because she went to that institute before me.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I got to know about this glamorous world of hospitality and, you know, very exciting space. And I said, why not consider this as a career option? That's where actually I started my working career and journey, yes.
Nice.
Worked for a few years, realized that I wanted to, you know, do something broader.
So you did a job in the hospitality?
I worked for 4 years, that's right.
Oh, wow.
In Delhi again.
What was that role like and what was it about?
So in the hospitality school, what ends up happening is that the big chains come into your campus and they do campus placements.
Yeah.
And again, just like the others in my batch, I sat for campus placements.
Yeah.
I got selected by a startup in the hospitality space which is called Old World Hospitality. And I was part of the management trainee batch.
Okay.
In the year that I graduated.
Right.
Now, this is the same group which has now, many years later, launched Indian Accent, one of the world's top Indian restaurants, globally known, right?
Correct.
So I got again a very good sounding grounding from that organization, which helped me, you know, understand nuances of hospitality, right from housekeeping to front office to food and beverage production and all of that. So. But having said that, at some point I really thought that I wanted to do something larger and maybe try moving into a different space. And I took a break to do a MBA.
Okay.
So I did a full-time MBA. Yeah. And then I rejoined the working space.
Got it. And when did you complete your MBA?
I completed my MBA in the year 2003.
And do you think that making that decision of doing an MBA was imperative or important for you to switch careers from a hospitality background to something else? Or what was your agenda with doing an MBA back then? What was the objective?
The objective again was to broaden my thought process, to develop my knowledge in different spheres, because I realized that an MBA as a qualification, it helps you really broaden your thought process as well as build a huge network. True. That is the core advantage of an MBA. Yeah. And my objective of really doing it was to actually address this, because without an MBA, I somewhere could see, and I saw it around, with professionals who were in the same space or who were a few years senior to me, that in the long term, the growth opportunities would have gotten limited. So that was a conscious decision to try and see that I would have to break out and try and, find an inflection point in my career. Yeah. And nothing like education or skill to help you do that.
Correct. But tell me this, because after doing the MBA, what was that point where you realized that HR is my calling? This is the domain I'm going to get into, or let's just try this out. When did that happen? What was that incident like?
So complete accident. And again, I don't know if your audience is going to love hearing this, but I landed in HR by accident.
Okay.
In my MBA, my major was in marketing.
Huh.
My minor was in finance.
Wow. And he's gone on to do HR.
Exactly. Which also goes to show the area that really you find your passion, your area of expertise, and you can't really plan for everything in life.
Yeah, you can't.
You got to continue giving it your best shot.
True.
And now, in retrospect, 20 years down, I can actually say that with confidence. And I hope that some people watching the show will feel confident and be able to take some meaning out of it.
True.
But narrow-minded as we are, when you're doing a particular qualification or picking up a skill, we feel this is the end point.
End point of
And if that happens, I'll make it. If that doesn't happen, the world will crash.
Correct.
It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
So that's the message I think I would want everyone to take away.
Yeah.
But yes, marketing is what I started off with. I was lucky to get placed at the same institute where I studied in the placements and the corporate communication team.
Okay, nice.
So that kind of gave me an exposure into how education works, and that got me my big break in Wipro.
Oh, lovely.
And in Wipro, I kind of navigated into the HR space, and then
That's
there's
when you
been no
started in
looking
the
back.
talent acquisition
Exactly.
team, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
The campus
You were into the
recruitment team.
employee branding team, and then you obviously went up the ladder. You were there for almost 6+ years.
10 years, in fact.
10 years.
Yes.
Oh, lovely. I think a very important question here, knowing what you did mention, right? When it comes to careers, and like you said, a lot of people do take it to their heart and feel like it is the end of the world, right? Being a career coach myself, and I speak to so many folks, what happens is if somebody has done an MBA in marketing, what's expected out of them by the society, by their parents, and everybody is now you have to do something in marketing. And if you don't, probably people think it's a career suicide, or people think you're extremely confused, right? The question I'm coming to is, if an individual pursues a particular degree professionally, and if they don't go on to utilize it practically in the real world, does it really have any implications, or do folks, when they're hiring, actually look at it negatively? I want to know that from you.
See, initially, at some point, there is a challenge in trying to break through.
Okay.
But if you look at the broader statistics there, and this is a well-known fact, most of the engineers that pass out of the top institutes like the IIMs end up doing a MBA from an IIM or equivalent institute overseas.
Correct.
And they do nothing related to that engineering which they studied for 4+ years, right?
True.
So it's not that your door's shut, but it's just about getting that self-confidence first, and then actually doing something that you're passionate about.
Got it.
Doors open up moment you start applying yourself and give it that 100% with ownership, that something that only you can do.
So a quick question here. If let's say there was a candidate who has had a software engineering background, let's say, I'm not even going down to colleges, has 3 years of experience in the industry as a software developer, and now wants to shift to, let's say, product management. Would you really look at the kind of, let's say, college they come from, their academic history and records? And would you also lay emphasis on the fact that that individual has no experience in product management whatsoever, but is applying for their job? What are the chances of that person getting a job?
Chances are low, I'll be very honest. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But yes, where this individual possibly needs to start is maybe find even a smaller organization which is willing to take a bet on him or her.
Yeah.
To try and network and find an entry into some organization where one can get a chance.
Yeah.
Because the larger brands, unfortunately, the big
MNC
players, MNCs, unfortunately have very rigid processes and systems designed, which is not wrong, because obviously when they're dealing with that kind of scale, they need to make processes and they need to have some, structures around them, because otherwise there'll be chaos.
Yeah.
So the idea then is that if you really want to break into a new area, maybe an internship, maybe, even pro bono, you have to go a little out of your way to make that shift. It doesn't happen easily.
But it's not impossible.
It's not impossible, for sure. Many people
Do it.
including me and before me, after me, have done it, yes.
Got it. Tell me a little bit about your journey at Wipro, Vikas, because like you mentioned, 10+ years at, one of the largest IT giants that we have. How did you transition in your role also? What kind of roles did you play, and what were you majorly looking after and responsible for as an HR? Because that'll also give insight to folks who, let's say, want to pursue becoming an HR, get into the field. And I also feel a lot of people have this confusion, if you can touch upon it. When you look at HR and when you look at talent acquisition, people don't understand that they are not the same thing as such, right? And are there any differences between the two? Is it just a terminology? It's a subset? If you can throw some light on it.
So, talent acquisition is clearly a subset in HR. The reality is that as an organizations grow larger and they need higher or larger amount of workforce,
Yeah.
they tend to separate the talent acquisition piece because that requires a completely different approach and operational rigor.
Yeah.
When you are hiring, let's say 100, 400, 500 resources in a month, then you need to adopt a equally sales and marketing driven approach as much as an HR approach.
True.
Because it becomes very target oriented there. Yeah. It's almost like a
They have
Samsung.
proper target?
Yes.
Okay.
It's almost like you being a, let's say, a sales leader for a Samsung television unit.
इतने televisions बेचने
Correct.
महीने में, that way.
एंड
You have a
HR,
target.
हाँ, टैलेंट एक्विजिशन गाय का टारगेट होगा कि इतने तुम्हें महीने में 100 लोग लेके आने हैं इस प्रोफाइल के, इस लोकेशन के लिए, इस सैलरी पे.
Got it.
And these are tracked then on a weekly, on a daily basis in terms of how many offers have been rolled out.
Yeah.
And we all know that in the world of recruitment, offer drops happen. Not everyone ends up joining.
Correct.
So you have to figure out how many of those people will join. And if you meet your targets, you do well. If you don't, then you are sort of underperforming. So in the smaller organizations, typically talent acquisition, TA, recruitment will be part of HR. It'll be one unified team. But in larger organizations, you will have
Then it's separate.
separated sometimes. And within HR, then of course you have different verticals or sectors.
Could you just
like
name a few prominent ones?
there would be engagement, business partner management. There'll be compensation and benefits. There'll be learning and development.
Nice. Yeah.
And performance management or the team that looks after appraisals. So there's a
it.
whole gamut. There'll be a
Right.
back-end payroll processing team.
Yeah.
There'll be HR operations. So there are various dimensions to HR, and typically what ends up happening is that one could join any one particular team depending on the entry one gets, and then basis interest, inclination, one can navigate between different arms.
Departments. But freshers are hired across all of these verticals that you named mostly?
Freshers typically are hired in the recruitment team mostly because again the reality is that maybe to an extent not the area which needs the highest degree of specialization versus let's say compensation and benefits needs a larger understanding of labor laws, of compensation frameworks, of government taxation. But recruitment per se is slightly simpler in that sense. So the entry point for anyone, in fact, that's what I even guide anyone approaching me, is whenever they want to break into HR is try and get into a recruitment team in some decent organization.
Got it. And you started as what was your role at Wipro?
I started as a campus recruitment manager. So at that point, Wipro BPO, the ITS arm of Wipro, was planning to expand its hiring team and have a dedicated campus recruitment team.
Oh, nice.
So I was fortunate enough to be selected because of my academic background in the business school, in the college.
Yeah.
And ability to network with colleges, attract talent. So now that gave me a entry point into Wipro. And we built up one of the largest campus recruitment teams in the country. We used to cover all states.
You must be visiting all campuses, right?
A lot of campuses throughout the course. It was in fact impossible to visit all because my team and I would cumulatively cover more than 400 campuses.
My God.
But I remember some lovely visits to cities like Shillong, to Nagpur, to Gwalior.
Nice.
And even south, the Vizag. And
what kind of volumes were you looking at, Vikas? Like in a year, let's say, how many folks were you hiring?
So in the BPO vertical, for example, we would hire close to about 4,000 to 5,000 in a year from campus.
5,000.
But for that, there we used to roll out close to 10,000 offers because the offer drop ratio was very high.
Was that high?
The reality was that BPO then, maybe even today, wasn't the aspirational job.
Correct.
So you would have students at campus taking the job offer, but fishing for something else which they found possibly better in their mind. Or in many cases, they would just stay back and join the family business. So we had all sorts of reasons which we kind of got.
Got it. And if someone was to eye for a role like yours, which is to get into the campus recruitment team at any of the leading companies, what do you think would be the major 3 to 5 skills that you must possess to excel in that role?
So the starting point is obviously to try and become a campus recruiter and then grow into that role.
Yeah.
But campus recruiter essentially needs to understand a little bit of HR, a little bit of marketing, like we were discussing.
Okay.
Should be very comfortable working with people, should have a good flair for presentations because you end up doing that in campuses. Should be patient, should be able to, and very comfortable traveling because that's a job in which you kind of literally live out of your suitcase. You could be in one city on Monday, another city on Tuesday. And of course, now it's slightly different in the sense that in 2025, we have the advantage of remote interviewing platforms as well, where you just send a link to a campus, students can apply there,
Yeah.
and then they come on to a video interview with you and get selected.
Selected, yeah.
But even today, for a large part of campus recruitment teams, they do prefer to go to campuses to build
Yeah.
that connect with students, to
True.
get a better sense of the student quality,
Yeah.
and then extend offers.
Got it. Interesting. And when you would go onto the campus and you were a part of the campus recruitment team, irrespective of the role as such, whether it was for the BPO hiring or as you would have progressed through the role, if you were hiring for other verticals, Vikas, what would you look for in a candidate's resume when hiring as an HR? What were some key points or spikes that you would really want to see?
So for me, call me old school Dhairya, but I was very particular on seeing the academic
Yeah.
rigor and the achievements.
Okay.
Because my belief is that when you're a student and when you fill up any application form,
Yeah.
your profession, if you remember, even you would have done it,
Yeah.
would be you would be writing student.
Yeah, correct.
Which means that if you've not focused on your studies or your academic program, you've not done justice to your profession.
Yeah.
And how will you do that later, 5 years, 10 years down in your corporate life, right? So that is the starting point in my view, in my experience.
Yeah.
But coupled with that, I would always look at what is the additional pieces that this individual has done over and beyond the school or the academic rigor.
For example, what would you?
It could be participating in societies, whether it's debating, or
Yeah.
it could be participating in some sports competitions. Has that person picked up any certificates, any medals at the university level, zonal level, whatever?
Yeah.
Just to try and understand, is that person really focusing on growth? Because very often you get a CV, especially at campus, which is got hobbies written, which are reading and watching movies.
Yeah.
Now that's pretty
It
much.
happens even today.
It happens sadly even today, which is 99% of our population likes to do that. So how are you different, right?
Yeah, true. But tell me one thing. That do you even need to mention what your hobbies are in a resume? Let me ask an HR only.
It's not essential,
It's not
except
essential,
in
right?
junior years, because essentially you don't have much to showcase there. So you
Like, what
have
would
to-
you as an HR even get from me telling you these are my
Exactly.
hobbies? Is my question.
So it's this age old ऐसे होता जा रहा है तो ऐसे होते रहेगा वाला किस्सा. But more than that is of course extracurricular achievements is what
What you may look
as
for.
an HR professional I will be more keen to look at.
Got it. Also, when you look into the experience section of an individual on the CV, because a lot of times, obviously, people are very proficient in talking about this is what I was supposed to do. Supposed to do is you would be knowing better than me. There's a job description rolled out for every role that a company is hiring for, which clearly states this is what you're supposed to do. So, essentially, what I feel candidates mostly do is just write down what was written on their JD that this is what I'm doing. But is that enough? That this is what I'm doing in this role?
So that's clearly not enough, and in fact that's one of the easiest and shortest ways to get rejected, because
Okay.
when we are evaluating a CV, you're not looking for a JD. We already know typically what roles involve and what expected deliverables are there.
Correct.
What we are looking for is data points, proof, validation of what you've done and achieved.
Yeah.
So we are looking for hard data in terms of how many, let's say, sales you've achieved, or how many, Six Sigma projects you've done,
Right.
right? How many project improvements have you completed in the last 1 year?
Yeah.
And if you can substantiate that through data points and through recognitions like awards, certificates that you've captured along the way,
Yeah.
that's what helps us to make a better informed decision.
Got it.
Because otherwise, everyone, let's say in one particular team,
Yeah.
who's copy pasted a JD into their CV, is essentially the same for us
Yeah.
on a equal footing, right?
True.
So what we're looking for is a little bit more beyond that.
Got it. So, what are some common mistakes that you have spotted in fresher resumes when you go ahead? Like typical mistakes that people tend to do, even when you were hiring back then versus even today. Any common mistakes, Vikas, that they tend to do at the formatting level, at the articulation level, content level, templates, anything that you typically see them repeating?
I think some of them are the mistakes which hit you first the moment you hold a CV in your hand, and which is your formatting related issues, where there are spelling mistakes, a strict no in my book. Doesn't work at all, because it just shows you're not quality conscious.
Yeah.
I mean, it's your entry into a job,
And you're not
if
even
you're not
caring
even
about
caring
the
enough
spellings.
to, and it's not difficult, right? I mean, today's software will identify it for you.
True.
You don't even have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
So spelling mistakes, different fonts being utilized, you know, data missing. For example, let's say a date of start and a date of end.
Yeah.
Those are some basics which, when missing in a CV, just kind of immediately make one write off the candidate, because it's hard to even push yourself to do a decent interview after that.
True.
Because you realize that a person who's not willing to invest this much effort in one's own career at the start is not going to be able to, or going to be focused enough to invest a lot going forward. So
True.
that's something that I really hope people understand.
True. I'll ask you one very burning question. A lot of people ask me this also, that should I add my picture in my resume or not? So let me ask you this. Is it important for a person to have their own picture put up on the resume? How important is it?
You should have your own picture if you're having a picture, for sure.
Yeah. But why is
No.
the picture important?
Picture's not important, and frankly speaking, it doesn't matter whether you have it or not.
Got it.
But what I would caution is, if it's a picture, let it be a professional picture, photograph.
Definitely.
Can't be a full-length photograph unless you're applying for, let's say, an airline and they've asked for it. It's part of the specs or something like that.
Correct.
But other than that, you need to make sure that's a professional-looking photograph, not something you've cropped out from a party that happened last weekend and you had put on your makeup, so you think you're looking very good.
Yeah.
But it's a professional document. Treat it as a professional space. And
True. Okay, got it. Also, since we are speaking about resumes, Vikas, let's ask you again. A lot of people think that the moment my resume goes beyond 2 pages, it will be rejected. Is that true? Is there a particular length that you look at? Is there a, I don't know, golden number? Because बहुत लोगों को लगता है the moment I have a 2-pager or more, or some people even think if it's not a 1-page resume, that means I am rejected. So what is an ideal length that you look at, or do you even consider the length?
So, no, sorry, we do consider the length in the sense that typically put yourself in the feet of the recruiter. The amount of CVs that they or get to read every day is humongous, right?
True.
So essentially, you've got to make an impact in the first 1 or 2 pages, right? Beyond that, not many recruiters will even bother looking.
Okay.
Having said that, at junior levels, mid-level, I think 2 pages is more than sufficient to showcase your career and your education history.
Got it.
And your accomplishments.
Yeah.
Anything more than that will possibly be overkill. But if you do have value, if you do have certifications, you do have content which you know is valuable and which will differentiate you from the competition, by all means go ahead and have that 3rd page.
Okay.
But earlier in my career, one of my bosses said this to me and it always stayed with me. He said, even Bill Gates' resume is 1 page. And ever since that, I've kind of restricted my own CV at least to 2 pages.
Right. Yeah. So condense it as much as possible.
Correct.
I also feel at the same time, correct me if I'm wrong, because I also feel that you wouldn't very welcomingly also just want to read a half-page resume.
Exactly.
Underdoing it is also obviously not appreciated. Probably overdoing it will also be a little too much.
Correct.
Right? Because I've seen a lot of people just in that intention to keep it as short as possible, then condense it too much as well.
Yes. So it is your pitch deck. And if you can't be bothered to fill at least 1 page of quality information, then again, the question is, are you really serious about what you are applying for, or what you want to do? And at the same time, within 2 pages, if you can make it impactful with the right data points, the right certifications, right validations, then by all means, you should be selected for the next rounds and your objective would be met. So why not do that?
Got it. That brings me to talking a little bit about the ATS. Vikas, do companies like a Weber Shandwick where you're working, Wipro when you were working prior, the other startups that you worked at also, and slightly smaller companies, irrespective of the size of the MNC or whether it's a startup, how many of these companies actually use an ATS to track the resumes? And at what stage do these resumes actually come to human HRs like you? In today's day and age when hiring happens, if you can take us through just the process. Let's say I'm a candidate, I apply to Weber Shandwick, and I have uploaded my resume on your careers page. What's going to happen next?
So once the candidate is applied to any organization, and mostly most organizations of a decent size nowadays, there is use an ATS. It just simplifies the recruitment process. And once the resume lands in the ATS, they get passed on to the recruiter, whoever has posted that job.
Got it.
Now, what the ATS does in most cases is that assigns a score to it, basis the initial parsing done by the system, automated system that is built into the software.
Right.
So, if your CV is high quality, has the right relevant skills and data points that the profile or the job requires, then chances are that it will get scored higher and will land up at the top stack. Now, most ATSs will be configured to show 10 CVs or 20 CVs max per page.
Okay.
And then the recruiter has to click on the next to see the next 20, next to see the next 20, and so on.
Right.
No, so your chances of being viewed by the HR recruiter are highest if you're on the first page of those CV displays.
Correct. So when they see it,
Correct.
the first 10 or 20 ones.
Exactly. And that's what really you should be aiming for, because in our country, unfortunately, the area, I think the applications per job are so high for any job, be it at a junior level, mid level, senior level, that within seconds of posting it on a job platform like LinkedIn or other, there are hundreds of applications.
True.
And it is impossible for any human recruiter to sit and
Go
go
through all
to
of
page
them.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why a lot of candidates actually don't hear back, because unfortunately they've not just reached the recruiter. The people that
So
typically
there are
the
very high
recruiter-
chances their resume has not even been seen.
Unfortunately, so that's a reality.
Okay. Okay.
Because the volume of applications is always so high.
Right. Got it.
And once the CVs on the first page, for example, the top 4, 5, if the recruiter happens to find a few great profiles,
Good ones,
it's quite likely the recruiter will not even go down to the 7th, 8th, 10th,
And higher within the first 5 only.
higher within the first 5, because for every candidate that's interviewed or pre-screened by the recruiter,
Yeah.
he or she knows that there'll be another set of interviews to coordinate
Yeah.
going forward with the business leaders and so on.
Right.
So typically at any point for any job, there'll be about 3 or 4 candidates in the fray, right? Which will, in most likelihood, emerge from that first page on the
ATS display.
That's
the reality. Okay. Got it. Tell me this, Vikas, when you look at HR as a profession and people wanting to get in here and pursue it as a career, what can someone's career progression look like? Obviously, we spoke about what you look at when you're looking at a candidate's resume. How do you hire? How does the ATS have an impact in the resume? But if someone wants to be on the other side of the table and wants to be a recruiter themselves, we spoke about skills they'll need as well. But tell me, what would your progression look like, right? What level do you start from, and what's like the ceiling like? And also, if you can throw some light on the kind of salary ranges and bands that work around typically in India on an average.
Cool. So there it's pretty straightforward in the sense in HR you typically start at a very operational level. If you're in recruitment, you'll really start with actually screening CVs and doing the first telephonic call to see if there's a basic fitment.
Yeah.
And depending on how large the organization is, you may end up having a senior recruiter do another level of validation before the candidate is even showcased to the business team.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a very operational starting point, because it also helps you understand the organization at a very basic level, understand the kind of talent which is available in the market, where they are available. So you get to, source them, find them, you do cold calling at times.
Yeah.
So that's where you really start from, and then you start understanding how to interview, you build up your skills.
So your role is that of a recruitment manager generally, or a recruitment associate.
Exactly.
Got it.
And this I'm just talking about the recruitment line, because similarly you'll have different
In others, you will maybe start in payroll or whatever.
correct,
other
or you'll
department.
start let's say an employee engagement partner, where
Correct.
you're actually working on the shop floor,
Yeah.
working with teams, trying to create engagement, keeping them excited, organizing events for them,
Right.
doing feedback surveys. So very operational level starting point.
Got it.
As you grow, you start getting a larger portfolio. You could be, let's say, hiring for a team, a particular office. You could be hiring for a branch, and similarly, you could be the engagement leader for, let's say, entire unit
Got it.
or a branch or whatever.
And what do the average salaries look like starting for freshers?
Again, very difficult question to answer, because it'll really depend on whether it's a large MNC or it's a private small organization, it's an SME. But typically at early, starting point at something like 10-15,000 a month could be a starting salary
Right.
in this space.
Yeah.
And thereon you grow year after year. And once you are, let's say, at a senior manager, vice president level, you're
Yeah.
handling a sizable portfolio.
Right.
You would have a decent package which could either be in the 20 to 30, 40 lakh range.
Yeah.
Again, very, very bold print because the
Yeah.
industry, the city, a lot of
It depends
dynamics
on a
play.
lot of other factors.
The organization,
Right.
scale and size.
What's like the end? Is there like a end role in the hierarchy that exists? Like after vice president, senior vice president,
So
what?
the highest
CHRO.
CHRO role is
Yeah.
really where, and again, you could be CHRO for a country, you could be CHRO for entire Asia Pacific region,
Right.
you could be a global CHRO. So it's pretty much, open-ended kind of career path depending on how capable you are and how aspirational you are.
Got it.
And again, at that level where you are a CXO, you are on the board, you are handling a global portfolio. I mean, you could have a compensation packages running into crores. You
Crores
could have
also,
equity, stock options,
Yeah.
the work. So it's the sky's the limit, like they
Sky's
say.
the limit, yeah. Lovely. Okay. Great. No, I'm sure that gives a lot of context to them also, right? Because I mean, ultimately, when you're choosing a career option, you do look at the compensation, obviously, and you must because ultimately it's going to be your bread and butter, and you would want to know what you can envision in the coming years, right? Having said that, I think Vikas, when we also look at a lot of these scenarios, right? Whenever any candidate is preparing for an interview, there is a lot of jitter, there is this nervousness, anxious feeling that even the most confident people have, right? I feel even today, if I have to, let's say, sit in an interview, I can say this, I mean, without any shame, that I will still be a little nervous, right? Because it's just human tendency. What are some common mistakes again? Since you would have interviewed, I'm sure, I don't know, lakhs of people by now. What are some common mistakes you've seen people do in interview rounds that you think people can avoid and must take care of, which just puts them off and gets them outright rejected? कि यार इसको तो अब लेना ही नहीं है. This just doesn't align with what we are looking at, and we have to drop it off.
Sure. So there are a few, and these are very basics if you ask me, right?
Yeah.
The first is obviously lack of preparation.
Yeah.
An interview is a big milestone. It's a big
True.
interaction. It's actually opening your career path in a direction that you possibly want to move
Yeah.
into. And if you're not prepared for it, again, that just speaks about your lack of interest in a sense.
Yeah.
There is the other big mistake that a lot of people make is not being on time sometimes.
Yeah.
We all know
Does that
traffic.
matter?
It matters because we are again going to interact in a professional setting for a career opportunity where the least one expects is discipline or
So if I'm 15 minutes late, but I'm a great resource and I have a very nice skill set and a great resume.
it depends because initially you'll have to recover from that dip which the interviewer already sort of made
Sort
a
of
negative
into.
perception in terms
Yeah.
of candidate not having reached on time for a interview. And so that will just make your task that much more
More difficult. Okay.
And we all know traffic is an issue in most of our cities, especially the metros.
Yeah.
And we all advise and guide applicants to leave in with even time with some margin so that they don't face that issue.
Got it.
But that's something that definitely is disconcerting. Yeah, those.
Anything else? Any other alarming red flags that you definitely look at?
So again, if it's a panel interview, for example, one also has observed where a lot of male candidates sometimes don't even address the woman in the room
Really?
for some strange reason. I don't know whether it's a lack of confidence or it is just that they just feel that it's the men who are interviewing them,
Yeah.
and something like that again
Just
disturbs.
a general
Correct.
default.
Setting. I don't know if I'm possibly sure it's not conscious,
Yeah.
but maybe it's a sort of
But you've kind of noticed it.
kind of noticed that, especially in let's say candidates from tier 2, tier 3 towns and
Yeah.
junior level.
Huh.
I mean, not so much in the mid and senior level. So that is again a sort of a red flag in terms of
Yeah.
when you have a panel in front of you, irrespective of who they are,
yeah.
they deserve equal respect and attention from the candidate, in my view.
Right, right. Do you look at a person's resume or when they are talking a little bit about their work experience and history, and let's say a person has frequently hopped jobs, एक job से दूसरी job, one job to another. Let's say there's a candidate who has stayed in 6 different organizations, each for 2 years or less, in a period of almost 5 years. what would you look at that scenario like, and would you consider that kind of a candidate to be let into your firm?
It needs to be seen in the larger context of why those movements happened, and what is the driving force.
Okay.
If it's a larger responsibility, bigger brand, then it's understandable.
Okay.
And if that individual during the course of the interview is also able to project and convey all of this effectively in terms of having grown also exponentially in that period, then why not? Yeah. But if it comes through that it's purely been for a few thousands,
Just that hike or that one. Yeah.
correct, and title change,
Yeah.
then frankly speaking, it kind of tells me as an interviewer that even this is going to be short lived.
But is it easy to spot who has done it for what motive and reason?
After a while,
Yeah?
after interviewing candidates for an extended period of time, I think that's what one
You
acquires
build
that
that.
skills, yes, and confidence to be able to judge effectively in terms of what is the driving force behind one's career movements.
Got it. Do you remember any incident, Vikas, where someone has lied to you very brilliantly in an interview or on their resume?
Oh yes, I
Yeah?
think it's happened
Does that
because
happen?
yes, I think it happens all the while because in interviews often there we put up our best faces, right?
Definitely.
Everything is prepared, and we have even career coaches and interview guides nowadays who kind of help candidates, fine tune their act, so to speak.
True.
So that happens all the while. Some of them go through as well. So I won't say it's foolproof.
Okay.
But yes, one goes with one's gut feeling, with the comfort one gets in the interview, and hopes that it's for the best. Yeah.
Any funny incidents or experiences when hiring that you clearly remember where you were just zapped and shocked with how this interview has gone and it took a turn which you never expected? I don't know if any such incidents have occurred
Often.
where you were caught off guard. You were like, I don't know what's happened and what's happening. What is this? This was not expected.
No, so though one beautiful moment I think I've personally observed is when one candidate broke into an impromptu song to try and showcase his talent.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was completely off guard because normally you tend to ask a candidate to sing, and
Yeah, but he
if
just
at all,
did
he
it.
just did it offhand. So it was quite interesting. Just showed me that next level confidence and
Yeah, nice. Good spirit.
yes.
Nice. Okay. With that, Vikas, tell me a little bit. Let's come back to your journey also and take it from there. Obviously, you happened to work at Wipro for a bit. Obviously, you did campus recruitment there, went on to stay there for about 10 plus years. Where did you move from that role, and what was the journey like after Wipro?
Sure. So after Wipro, again I moved into another large BPS player called Concentrix,
Yeah.
where I worked for close to 2 years. The portfolio size was much larger and allowed me to, improve or grow my recruitment skills at a larger framework.
Got it.
Post that, I moved to a company called StarTech, which is again in the ITS space, but here my portfolio expanded to more of HR. And besides recruitment, I was also branch leader for NCR.
Okay.
So that allowed me to kind of grow into the broader HR frame. And post that, I took a break to try and set up a venture of my own, which was in the campus space.
Okay.
So after a cumulative 14 odd years in the ITES space, I kind of felt stagnated, and the challenges were not really that exciting.
Yeah.
And that's when that whole desire to do something of my
your
own came about. And interestingly, that was in the campus space where I started my HR journey.
Oh, okay.
So it was a venture which I called Attain. It was about bringing experts into the campus space to interact with students. What I'd realized there during my years in HR, in recruitment, was that all the campus placement heads, the directors, they were connected to recruitment leaders,
Yeah.
the hiring teams of most large companies.
Correct.
But they had no gateway or access to people in other functions or departments, let's say like quality, like let's say finance and so on. So every year around, let's say the budget, whenever it was being presented, I would get a call requesting me to, let's say, send across a finance head from Wipro to try and explain the budget to the students of the batch.
Oh.
And the talent recruitment person sort of became that gateway point or entry point for anything to do with companies.
Yeah.
So I was envisioning at that point a kind of platform which would enable campuses to reach out to companies and to professionals across different domains, be it quality, finance, HR, or any other marketing, and be that sort of uh, piece in the middle,
Piece
which
in the
made
middle
that
to bridge
make
the
that
gap.
bridge the gap, make that handshake.
Right.
What happened around the same time is that just 3 months after I kind of took that plunge, the lockdown happened and COVID
Yeah.
broke out,
Yeah.
and suddenly we had people all accessible through platforms like Zoom.
Yeah.
Overnight, you name it, from India Inc., the who's who of India Inc. was available.
Available.
And they were more than willing to
To-
interact with students, share their learnings, their guidance.
True.
So I just realized that somewhere the technology had shifted, the way the world works, and had changed and would always remain like this for the future. So I realized that maybe this was not the right business model to sustain with for the long term.
Got it.
And I looked to get back into the corporate world, and that's when Weber Shandwick luckily happened.
Nice. Lovely. So currently, since you are the head of people at Weber Shandwick, what does your role right now entail, Vikas? Now that you have spent close to about 15 plus years in the practice, how is this role different from the others that you've had? And what does a typical day in your life look like?
Sure. So now, as head of HR for Weber Shandwick, I head HR for all the three offices, and the entire hire to retire cycle
Acha.
for employees is
Yeah.
really something that I oversee along with
Got
my
it.
team. So
Got it.
it's pretty interesting because it allows me to design, let's say, the talent attraction strategy, to also how to engage our staff, to help them in their learning objectives, to help them grow with the organization, and to give them multiple exposure, and to essentially help meet the organization's goal by also helping our talent flower and flourish under the same umbrella. So that's
Yeah.
what I do now.
Very interesting. Great. How long has it been, by the way?
I'll complete
You've been-
5 years this May.
5 years?
Yes.
Oh, lovely. This is wonderful. Great. Okay. So, coming back, Vikas, when we look at the entire job market scenario in 2025 currently, I think the buzz and chatter right now is around AI, and it's around how AI is going to obviously take over most jobs, create a lot more as well, but at the same time, replace a lot of them. As an HR professional yourself, how much of a role do you think has AI actually had in the hiring scenario, at least, and has it actually taken away the kind of jobs, that is the narrative that's being played around, is that it will take a lot of redundant and repetitive jobs? Okay, understood. But is there actually going to be a scenario wherein most typical roles that used to exist won't exist anymore, and new roles will have to evolve, and people will really have to adapt to it irrespective of the domain they're working in?
Clearly, there, I think that's true, because just like any tech revolution, when computers came as well,
Yeah.
there was a manual way to do work. Businesses were still running,
Yeah.
factories were still producing goods, they were getting sold, consumers were buying.
Yeah.
But computers, banking, they changed all of that and simplified life for a lot of workers, managed to automate, managed to make it more seamless for everyone across the value chain, right?
Yeah.
AI is doing pretty much similarly the same at maybe a 10x or a 100x level.
Yeah.
And even today, a lot of us are still figuring out the impact. I will be, not honest if I say I figured it all out.
Yeah.
But the fact is that yes, it's clearly visible, like you rightly said, repetitive, redundant, ongoing tasks will easily get automated, will easily get done through agentic AI.
Yeah.
And HR folks like myself will also need to and will be able to focus more on value additive tasks.
Yeah.
Right? What do I mean by that? A lot of the screening that typically front level recruiters do today
That won't be needed,
won't be
right?
needed, because the AI will get smarter to be able to figure out
Yeah.
the shortlisted candidates and present maybe not 10 but 3 good candidates for me to actually have an interview with, because that soft interaction, assessment of the social skills, all of that will still need a human being at least for some time
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
And that's where I think HR teams will get upgraded, because they'll do slightly more higher value work and be able to spend time on building relationships
Correct.
and give a better candidate experience for that matter.
Right.
So all of this is what we are going to be actually able to do now much better in the times to come.
Yeah.
And that's just an example from HR. Is going to similarly impact other industries, whether it's
Right.
finance, whether it's healthcare, and so on. So there's a change and shift happening. We saw it just a few days ago when We had this whole Ghibli art
Yeah, the Ghibli art image, the
im-
trend studio, Ghibli studio.
studio piece
Yeah.
working out. I mean,
Yeah.
one would have never imagined a few years ago that a illustration and piece of art could be so seamlessly made
Made, yeah.
through computer software. But
Correct.
that's what's happening. So
True. I mean, that man, I think I saw that reel also that I can't pronounce his name, but the man who actually built that piece of art, it took him 18 plus or 16 plus years of his life to bring it to life and to make it look like it is today. And years of his experience are just, people are replicating it in a second now. I mean, where are we? I don't know where we are heading, but that brings me to ask you, Vikas, then this question becomes even the more relevant. What are not just the softer aspects, I'm also talking about the hard skills and soft skills, irrespective of the role that you're hiring for, which just become very imperative for a person to thrive in 2025 and build a successful career, so to say, or a sustainable one if not successful. Because I think, like you said, there's so much competition, thousands of people applying to the same role. Probably everybody is equipped enough and is having information wherein they know now, okay, there's an ATS also. People try their best. See, everybody is working hard. So what are those skills that you will still look for which will make somebody stand out? Also, do you look at the social media presence that people have or the digital footprint A candidate has versus B when you're screening them, and there's a comparative analysis at some level?
of course. And to answer the first part first, the fact is that going forward, I think what will be extremely important is your tech skills coupled with your creative skills.
Okay.
Because in any field, whatever be your chosen area of work, you've got to be able to understand the implication of tech and work along with tech.
True.
You can't say I'm going to stay distant from AI or the platform that is available and I'll still do it
Yeah.
in my old school way, because clearly someone who has that AI or tech plus advantage is going to be able to do it faster and cheaper and more effectively than you are.
True.
So that goes without saying. The second part is the creative piece, which is where still, like you pointed out, Studio Ghibli founder Miyazaki,
Yeah.
something that originates from creativity is still an edge that we still have. I mean, after all, AI still had to be trained on that particular art form to be able to replicate it.
True.
So what stops us from creating the next creative art form?
Yeah.
So if as an individual one can make sure that one develops one's creative skills, one's ideation skills, I think we'll be in a better space to be able to survive
Right.
better going
Right.
forward.
Right.
And to the second part of your question, yes, when you, as a recruiter, as any business leader today, for example, who's looking to hire someone for their team, a cursory check of social media does happen for the most part, because essentially one is trying to look at what we call in HR speak as the cultural
Cultural
fit,
fit,
right?
yeah.
And there, from a social profile, you do get a sense of the candidate and what his or her interests are, or inclination is, or
You do like a
personality is
screen
like.
check of what kind of social links generally?
Mostly it's LinkedIn in a professional
Yeah.
setting, but some people are even want to go on to check Insta or a
Insta,
Facebook,
yeah.
depending
Yeah.
on which industry you're in and what kind of content you share, just to get a sense of your personality.
Right.
Again, it's also more from the point of view of ensuring that there are no red flags. Some inappropriate comments or behavior on social media,
Yeah.
which today, frankly, our lives are so intertwined with our corporate tags
Yeah.
and organizations
Yeah.
that it's difficult to delink the so.
You can't
the same.
separate
Dude
them.
can't delink the same.
Yeah.
Right? Moment, let's say an unfortunate incident happens with someone, the first media report is so and so of
So-and-so
such
employee
of
of-
correct. So organizations have to safeguard their larger interests, and for that reason, I think a social media sanity check is always a good idea.
Good idea. Great. So I think this is amazing. I think it's been a lot of learning for me also to kind of understand that, especially like you said, social media, and when it comes to just a basic cursoring and check as to certain comments, behaviors, does reflect in the long term what kind of issues could crop up, right? Because obviously I'm sure you are looking at ultimately folks who will also be able to gel in well with the existing folks, right? Because they're going to work in a team at the end of the day. You have to ensure that the team culture and the entire workplace culture is not being disturbed because of any one element coming in. So let's talk a little bit about workplace culture now, Vikas. I think it's a good segue into it. who doesn't want to work at a firm that's not just inclusive and diverse, but is also supportive of just an individual's growth in such a large scheme of things, right? At the end of the day, I truly believe no matter where you're working, fortunately, unfortunately, you are a cog in the wheel. But at the same time, how is it that companies, especially HRs, who are responsible for making policies, so to say, can ensure that the mental, physical, emotional well-being of employees is kept at the forefront while building these policies, and they are having a holistic growth at a firm and not just, let's say, growing professionally to meet their KRAs and KPIs? How do you look at this entire piece?
So there, the starting point for that is really that the leadership has to buy into this philosophy. It always is
Well
top
said.
down in this case,
Yeah,
and I've
yeah.
seen that across various organizations where the leadership has been very focused about putting employees first, is where the organization has really flowered.
Yeah.
And once employees feel good about coming into work, being together, hanging around together, maybe even spending some time outside office hours together, is where the real magic happens.
But that culture is not built overnight, because
It's not built overnight.
Yeah.
So it has to happen day after day by setting the tone. Of course, policies you have to and you can't do without,
Yeah.
because you need some structure, some framework to kind of run your business operations.
Right.
But what I caution and what we try to do is to have policies as a guiding document, but then to treat each individual as a unique individual.
Okay.
Because the challenge today also there is that for many organizations, and in fact now we see it with this multi-generational workforce, that everyone has their own different aspirations.
True.
Earlier you could get away with a Friday fun event, but today you can't.
Yeah, just a Friday engagement session wherein you're just having, like, let's say, a mini dinner cannot compensate, no, not compensate for, but I don't think that is enough for you to cater to everybody's needs and what they are looking for.
Correct.
Yeah.
Today there will be that group of people on your team who will want to go out on a Friday evening and just let loose after
Yeah.
a heavy 5-day working week, right?
True.
But there will be a small amount or an equal amount who just want to run home and be with their families.
Yeah. True.
Or someone who may just want to go home and curl up with
Yeah.
a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the smarter, astute managers and HR professionals try and read those signals and then create programs or engagement basis that.
Got it.
And in fact, today we have reached a point where Dhairya, I think HR is not just HR's job. Every manager needs to own.
Yeah.
Because ever since the pandemic happened,
Yeah.
we realized that for the longest period, for many organizations, it extended up to a year and a more, where everyone was working remotely. It was impossible for HR to pick up the phone or get onto a Teams call and connect to each staff member. Right?
Yeah.
So what we were expecting and what many, at least good managers managed to do, is connect to their team in that virtual environment as well. And that's why whatever signals came in from those managers in terms of how their teams were feeling were fed back into the HR processes, policies, so that we could then support the organization and support our people more importantly.
Better. Great. So I think a good segue into what I wanted to ask you around motivating your employees, or what really takes their clock. I mean, gone are the days where I feel honestly most folks are working just for money, Vikas. I've seen so many of my friends, I'm genuinely even speaking, let's say, even if my sister or anybody, if I'm talking to today, money is not the biggest motivator. Great, it's good to be drawing a good salary, but they would at the drop of a hat join a firm which was paying them 20-30K grand lesser, but probably catering to some need of theirs. Let's say the ability to work from home 3 days and just come to office 2 days, or the ability to work from anywhere in the world, or let's say an organization giving them the freedom to also pursue something of their own on the side. So how do you actually cater to these diverse needs of people today in the working ecosystem, wherein you're able to motivate them beyond just a paycheck?
And the fact is, there is that with a paycheck, you can never motivate everyone.
Yeah.
The reality is that if you're able to offer X amount, your competition will come with X plus 1.
Exactly.
And then the next competition will come with X plus 2. So it's a battle you can never win, right? So as an organization, one always has to try and find what is the plus that you can offer to make employees stick with the organization. And in these days, more recently, over the last couple of years, what I've realized is that the top reason most employees want to stick and be with an organization is One, that there is respect
Yeah.
and there is a sort of belongingness that they feel.
Yeah.
And secondly, there is a understanding or a flexibility which they are provided.
Okay. Flexibility in terms of?
Flexibility in terms of being able to manage their schedule, their work in a way that works for them. Given the fact that today, if you look at any general individual, there are obligations mostly from the point of view of, let's say, either elderly parents or young children
Yeah.
or a working spouse. So you need to have some flexibility to be able to take out time when you need to for yourself. And by and large, most people have realized in my 20 plus years there, I don't want to do a bad job at work.
Yeah, actually, see, the general motivation is that I'll give my best.
Correct.
Who wants to say that I don't want to do anything and I'll just sit?
Yes,
That's not the general intention.
correct. And I have started my career in a time, like we discussed 20 years ago, where
Yeah.
we were almost monitored like factory workers at some point
Yeah, true.
when it meant 9 to 6.
Micromanagement.
So it's not something that can work in 2025.
Yeah.
But yes, you need to be able to set a framework where goals are clear, where expectations are clear, so that individuals know how they are going to or what are they going to be measured on. And you also need to be able to provide them the right tools that they need for their job.
Got it.
If you give them these, the right tools, enablers, the right support structure, there is no reason that they will not perform at their job. And then you just give them that little additional benefit in terms of giving them the flexibility to work from home or
Yeah.
come in late on a couple of days when they need to.
Yeah.
Of course, with their manager's approval or
Approval,
buy-in or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
so that there is complete visibility. I think that works wonders in these times.
Got it. No, yeah, I think makes a lot of sense. And with that, I also feel that since we're talking about compensation and compensation not being the only factor or I would say majority's decision making point for most folks. I think salary negotiation is something that a lot of people talk about, Vikas, and a lot of people also struggle with knowing how is it that I put my case forward and make it presentable and make a point in front of an HR without also offending them and keeping due respect to the offer that's being made to me as well. I think it's a very tricky position to be in. I think both for the employer and the employee. I'm sure you would have been in certain scenarios where you would have received counter offers to a certain offer that you would have made to a candidate. In those situations, what are you really testing or looking at when a person on the table is negotiating a salary or saying, hey, I understand you're offering me an X, but I genuinely think I deserve 2X. And they're able to back it up with social proof. But let's say you also, as an HR, have been given a budget, right? Every job has got a salary band or a budget allocated by the company, which I think you can move around with a little here and there. But what do you do in such situations where there's a very talented individual who you really want to get on board to the company? It's a resourceful person, but they're not willing to budge on the amount, let's say, or on the salary being offered.
See, there you answered it partly yourself. The reality is that every position has a budget attached to it, and in any organization today, there are very clear budgets because profitability is checked at a unit level, at a team level, at a function level. So
Okay.
one has to operate within that, and
There are no exceptions made to it.
very rarely. And
Very
of course, it depends on again how critical that individual resource is. What is the alternative available? Let's assume there are 3 candidates in the fray, and one is very, very picky about that compensation being a deal breaker.
Yeah.
One will then have a judgmental call to make in terms of whether the second and third candidates who are also shortlisted are they equivalent or at least part almost good enough
Yeah.
to be able to be looked at.
Yeah.
And in some cases, you let the other individual go because your budget just can't absorb
Match
that
up,
impact.
yeah.
So that's a call that's taken in totality with the business leader who's hiring in question, because ultimately it's a P&L of that team or unit that gets impacted.
Right.
Of course, at a larger level, the organization gets impacted, but every business leader also has to monitor and manage his or her own P&L
Right.
carefully. So
Yeah.
it all comes down to whether at that point in time, the additional payout that needs to be done, does it really fit well in the larger scheme of things for that business?
But do you appreciate it when a candidate is negotiating their salary? Is it looked at as something that's not appreciated?
No, I think it's fair if the candidate has a strong sense of
Yeah.
one's worth,
Yeah.
the market parity for that particular role, kind of responsibilities,
Yeah.
and understands his or own worth. I think that's perfectly fine in commanding that.
Right.
Again, one of my ex-bosses shared this statement with me,
Huh.
and it really stuck with me. The statement is something like this: in life, you don't get what you deserve; you get what you negotiate.
Yeah, very well said. That's true.
So often,
Oftentimes.
yes, and for candidates to know their self-worth is important. But again, what I would caution is that it can't be a number out of thin air just because.
Yeah.
And we often see that in our market where 30% or 40% hike
Hike.
तो मिलना ही चाहिए. क्यों
पर क्यों
मिलना
मिलना चाहिए? True.
It may work in some spaces, it may work where the talent may be short, but not every increment or hike can be 30 or 40%. Businesses will not be viable at that rate.
Exactly. True. Well said. Great. I think with that, Vikas, also when we look at the entire hiring space and when we look at HRs obviously wanting to attract the best talent into a firm and also nurturing them, wanting them to sometime in the future be at the leadership level, etc. Do you think that in the larger play out of things, is it the soft skills or the hard skills of the person that make them successful and reach a certain level in the hierarchy in an ecosystem, irrespective of the domain they are working in? As an HR, what kind of talents have you seen really outgrow and perform, right? I'm sure as an HR, you spot certain people that when you're hiring also कि ये अच्छा करेगा or this person seems to be like a person who will stick around with the firm for a bit and will do really well for themselves. How do you spot such things, and what traits do you think have made them go about at least reaching some kind of a leadership position in a firm? Those folks who tend to stick around for like 10 plus years, etc., and go on to become leaders.
So I don't think with hard and soft skills it's a either or.
Okay.
It's definitely an plus
Nice.
plus because
Yeah.
at the senior most levels you need a combination of both for sure, right? You start off, let's say in any organization at a junior level, you maybe get hired because of your hard skills and
Yeah.
some element of soft skills.
Right.
But as you grow through the ladder, I think a combination of both becomes more and more important. And at the highermost levels, Dhairya, I think the power to take people along, influence, be able to command yourself in a room of equally talented, accomplished people becomes all the more important.
Yeah.
So those are some of the traits which unfortunately somewhere in the middle years, I feel not everyone is able to absorb or pick up.
Pick up, yeah.
And what happens is that once we pass out of college, we start working in our corporates and start climbing that ladder. We start maybe improving on our technical and hard skills. We pick up more certifications and we pick up more awards or recognition along the way.
Yeah.
But some of these softer issues of how do you manage people or get people from other teams who are not reporting into you, work with you, to buy into your vision,
Yeah.
to be accountable to you, don't happen organically. They need support, and often that support is not something you can directly read in a book and pick up.
Yeah.
It can, or possibly you could be coached on it, but not many people go in for that external coaching.
True.
So what happens is that the ones that do, or the ones that hang around with people who are more accomplished or who have been down that path, seniors, tend to pick up some of those skills and then shine through.
Got it. Perfect. Great. I think with that, Vikas, we didn't speak about your book, but you also happen to obviously author a book as well. Again, very close to the HR space, called HR in My Heart. You're very well representing it with your signature shirt as well. Tell me a little bit about the book. How did the book come through in the midst of such a demanding profession? Doing this for close to about 20 plus years, also creating on LinkedIn. Where did the thought where was the seed planted? And what do you really talk about in this book? Obviously, beyond what we understand, just by the name, how is it different and what are you trying to help the readers with in this book?
Sure. So it was a passion project in a sense. It
Okay.
was written during the time when I said I was trying to set up my venture.
Right.
So
During the pandemic.
during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And the idea was that since I was going to be working with campuses, working with students, the idea was to try and give them additional information from my own learnings
Right.
to help them understand what is leadership all about
Okay.
in a very grounded
No fancy jargon.
jargon, no theory in that sense. What I've done in the book there is that I've taken incidents from my HR journey of 20 years,
Okay.
very pivotal incidents, some related to interviews, some related to the annual appraisal process, for example.
Yeah.
And I've just kind of reflected on them. I've picked out my learnings from them and presented them to the readers in a
Got
way
it.
that will help any early career, mid career individual understand the larger world of work.
Okay.
Right?
Got
So
it.
it's not so much of an HR book. The entire title is actually HR in My Heart, Leadership Lessons Like Never Before.
Okay.
So these episodes are those that even someone, let's say, who's worked for 1 year in a corporate, and I know you worked with some of the with one of the top brand, will be easily able to relate to, because
Got it.
there are slice of life kind of incidents.
Yeah.
But yes, they were impactful in shaping my HR.
It's not a very big read also. I
Not
think
a
it's
very
very
big.
consumable, very...
Correct.
Yeah. Amazing. Got
In
it.
fact, I've written one more which should be of relevance to your audience. It's an ebook actually, which
Okay.
is 101 fail-safe interview cracking questions book.
Can you repeat the name again?
101 fail-safe interview cracking questions ebook.
Okay.
I'll
Very
tell you why.
interesting.
Now, again, a cheat sheet.
How can they access this though?
It's online from my LinkedIn profile. They can
On your
just
LinkedIn profile?
find the
Yeah.
link and they can download it.
Nice.
Again, as an HR professional, I'll tell you a simple truth. Typically, all interviewers will ask a few random, simple, straightforward questions. What have you done? Where have you studied?
Where do you see yourself?
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your strengths?
Yeah.
And what I've done is I've compiled the 101 top questions in my 20 years of career, which I've seen being asked, and I've put it out there. What I have personally done for interviews where I've gone and interviewed as a candidate,
Yeah.
is I've used those questions to prepare myself before the interview.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's a great hack
Hack,
if someone
yeah.
wants to leverage
Very,
it.
very nice. Lovely. I think you all should check it out and download it for sure. And it's free to download, so why not?
Correct.
Wonderful. Okay. I think with that, Vikas, let me quickly also talk about a slightly sensitive but an important matter. When it comes to HR, it's very important to talk about POSH as well. And very few people tend to obviously give it as much importance, but obviously it's a very integral part of just setting up the policies, so to say, and ensuring every individual is feeling not just, let's say, safe and inclusive at work, but also knows that they're at the right place and everything is going to be taken care of. How important do you think it is to ensure POSH regulations being there in place? And what are some common mistakes you see even the large corporates make when it comes to POSH activities?
Sure. So there, I think, apart from the fact that the law mandates you to have a POSH policy in
Correct.
place and be compliant,
Yeah.
I think as any good organization, one should be very, very open and clear about having the POSH framework in place. So, because it's a huge enabler.
It is.
Realities in our country in the last 20 years, I've seen that we're still at that stage where we are encouraging female participation, forget about other genders, and trying to make it holistic in that sense. But that's the least any well-hearted or good-hearted organization can do, in my view. So it's non-negotiable. Once you have that POSH framework in place, I think it's very important to communicate that on an ongoing basis
To everybody
to
across
everybody.
the
Correct.
organization.
That you are compliant and you stand for no nonsense and you have a zero tolerance.
Yeah.
And the truth is that in any organization there will be attrition, like it or not.
Obviously.
It may be controlled, it may be slightly on the higher side, but fact is you'll have people leaving, you'll have people joining in as well. So you've got to make sure that very regularly you keep pushing that message out, so that even the new people who are joining your organization understand and get to know what is the facilities available to them should they unfortunately face an issue.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
That's where I think one of the mistakes also happens, where that communication is not ongoing. It's
Right.
a poster put up in the pantry or the meeting room and it's forgotten and stays there.
Yeah.
The second is the fact that the POSH policy also is gender neutral.
Yeah.
We often forget that in any environment there's also likelihood of, let's say, a male being impacted.
Definitely.
So
Why not? Yeah.
giving males a confidence also that
Then
yes,
they can also come up
access.
and talk about things,
Correct.
and there's access.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is something that also is not possibly stressed upon enough, in my view.
I agree. I agree. Right. And I think a major part also comes to, because I also remember when I joined my previous firm as well, and when you're just entering into a firm also, there are specific trainings that you have to go through even before you're onboarded, right? Or right after you're onboarded, there's a week long of training modules that you go through and etc. And I think Posh is a very integral part of it, right? And since we're also talking about just workplace culture and just an inclusive environment, I also want to understand, Vikas, is the problem of this woman to male ratio in the workforce a actual thing even today, and how much of it is just being impacted by the fact that people look at a talent as a tag of a woman versus a male, and hence X is capable of ABCD and Y is capable of more, and hence we wouldn't want to hire you for this role? Is that a reality, and how much of it comes into play? How much of a disbalance do you see in the workforce?
It is still unfortunately a reality. It stems right from our society, where I know for a fact, having gone into the hinterland, that in tier 2, tier 3 cities, there is still that little bit of concern that parents have in terms of sending
Yeah.
their daughters to the bigger metros, because realities in our country, what has happened there is that the larger MNCs or the bigger development has happened in the metros.
Huh.
So even if one wants to, let's say, take up a career or a profession in their own tier 2, tier 3 town,
Yeah.
there are not enough opportunities available. And by default, you're expected to, or you need to move to a different city or metropolitan city.
True.
And that's where resistance comes in, both at a societal level,
Yeah.
and then it requires really right from your parents to, having to support you, to you having the self confidence to shift gears and move and
Yeah.
start from scratch in a big
City.
city.
Yeah.
So coupled to that, at the workplace, you've got still a lot of unfortunately a few managers, and I've seen that as recently as last 7-8 years, where they have that mindset of women having to take, let's say, maternity breaks
Yeah.
or
Taking care of the family, starting a new family
so
also.
correct. So it's possible they've experienced that in their own home, that's why they're externalizing it and extending it to the broader
Yeah.
corporate space, but that's the reality. So as HR, it's always important for us to push back and try and make sure that that discrimination doesn't happen right at the
Right.
starting point.
Right.
And once within the setup, even today, the reality is that as you go up the ladder,
Yeah.
the percentage of women, be it any organization, tends to
It's just skewed.
it's
very
just skewed. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So we need a lot more work done on this front, and conversations like this obviously are a great starting point.
Yeah, I hope it helps in some way, probably. But yes. Okay, I think with that, Vikas, let's talk a little bit about your content creation piece as well, right? You obviously went on to author a book. You've done so much of work in this space. You're still obviously working, and it's been 5+ years at your current organization. How did the idea of writing on LinkedIn, sharing your thoughts there? You're a top voice on LinkedIn. You have close to about 45,000 followers there. And you seem to have built this thought leadership in the HR space on LinkedIn and seem to be one of the prominent voices when it comes to at least this industry. So tell me, how has LinkedIn, writing on LinkedIn, benefited, aided, and helped you not just grow as an individual, but how has it helped you professionally as well? And how has the entire piece of networking enabled your professional journey?
Great. So it happened pretty organically. I started off on LinkedIn again just around the pandemic,
Yeah.
and started sharing a few snippets. I didn't even know what content creation was about, or had no line of sight to it being sort of a career opportunity for a lot of people, and
Yeah.
being able to monetize it in that sense.
Correct.
But it was something that I enjoyed sharing, uh, episodes or instances from my own learnings, observations, and
You were doing textual posts only?
textual and a few
Text-
image posts,
Okay,
because
nice.
again, I think personally I'm a visual learner, so I
Yeah.
kind of couple it up with that.
Yeah.
And the transformational point, of course, was Leak Cap, which we spoke about,
Yeah.
where suddenly I got selected for it, and then it hit me that this is huge.
Right.
200 creators pan India out of LinkedIn's entire base.
Right.
That is something that's a
It's
huge
a-
achievement.
Correct.
And that's when I said, why not focus a bit more on it? As people started coming on board, joining my community, connecting with me, I think it also somewhere made me feel a little responsible towards them,
Yeah.
to be able to keep adding value to their lives. So it works, like symbiotic way.
Correct. True.
And I'm truly grateful for everyone who's been part of this journey, including you. And that kind of encourages me to continue just sharing what I do, because right now I'm lucky in a sense that I'm in a corporate job. So
Yeah.
this is a hobby in a sense, or I'm kind of just, growing and enjoying this phase of contemplation.
Right.
But it's also in some sense there are kind of, you can say, a de-stress piece for
sure.
me,
Yeah.
area of growth, because I learn new things when I sit people like you and this lovely podcast you're doing. It's again inspiring. Maybe I explore it at some point.
Why not? Yeah.
So that's how I've just taken it one step at a time.
Correct.
And gone with the flow and thoroughly enjoying it. That much I can say.
No, that's great. Close to about 4.5 years for you also of being at it now. And it's great to see you also grow and, be there. We were also at a common event right now for now a common friend of ours, Ankur, whose book launch Vikas was very kind enough to call me for. But I think these opportunities, and I think Vikas, I feel for me, I always say this, networking with folks like you and so many others that I get to meet, fortunately, it's a privilege every single day, has shaped me up into and given me access to 99% of the opportunities I have in front of me. I mean, it would be wrong to say all the time there is obviously a factor of luck. People say there's a factor of hard work, but there's a factor of networking as well that people don't talk about. I think that also brings me to asking you, Vikas, do you feel in the job market scenario also, a lot of times skills, certifications, or a degree, so to say, and networking, does networking outweigh these two at times?
Networking can open doors for you and make opportunities
What I
available
mean
to
is
you.
just give an unfair advantage to somebody because of the network they are surrounded by.
That's always been the case, right? If you think about it, and this is a fact which has been documented. I think they say for B schools as well.
Okay.
It's not your academic rigor or the quality of the teaching that you go through that makes a long-term impact in your
Yeah.
career. It's your networking. Because the kind of people that you meet in your batch,
Right.
when you spend those 1 or 2 years, whatever the case may be, and
The
that's
peer group.
peer group, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what they say for any B school, whether be it one of the top B schools in India or globally. They say your network is what gives you that edge in the long term. Because tomorrow, 10 years after passing out, working as, let's say, head of a hedge fund in India, you can pick up the phone and talk to the founder of a startup in Silicon Valley who's looking for funding or whatever.
Yeah.
Because of a network.
True.
So it's the same thing with a platform like LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
Now the only difference I would say there is that your quality of interaction has to be very good.
Okay.
On networking doesn't mean that it's give me,
True.
or I'm meeting you for
People look at it in a very transactional way.
correct. So networking is about adding value firstly to the other,
Yeah.
and at some point if you get something in return or you get value added to yourself, that's a plus point. And the more you approach networking that way, I think that's when doors open. So networking just enables you, like I said, to get more opportunities or showcase an opportunity which you may not have known about. Because what happens when you're in a particular, let's say, organization or in your own non-networked world, is that you only get to hear something which you may get to hear from your close people or see online somewhere.
Yeah, correct.
But moment you and I sit across a table or you go to a networking event, you never know from one to the next
What
what
is
conversations happen and what doors open for you.
Yeah. So adding on to that, Vikas, if there was a candidate, let's say, who was recommended to you as an HR by, let's say, the senior vice president or a senior leader in the firm and said that, hey, Vikas, just take a look at this profile. He or she is so and so and connected to me in this way, and I think he would make a great fit or she would make a great fit, versus there is a candidate who has applied through the normal system through LinkedIn, Easy Jobs or Easy Apply, or has applied through imjobs.com, Naukri, whatever, that they're on the career portal. Probably they fit on the first 10 or 20 pages also of that ATS where you said easy access hota hai. Who would you still prefer or at least look at first?
So I'll tell you something. The fact of the matter there today is again the reality of 2025, very different from when I started my career. That no one can create a job for you. Every company is so tightly managed in terms of the P&L, in terms of headcount, that you have to be good and deserving to get that job.
Okay.
right? Those days are gone where चाचा ने भतीजा को कंपनी में लगा दिया.
हाँ, वो नहीं होता.
वो नहीं होता, बहुत मुश्किल होता है.
ठीक है.
एंड होता भी होगा तो आई थिंक यू हैव टू बी CEO,
फिर
सन
तो
और
आप
डॉटर और
बहुत ही
नेफ्यू.
बड़ा, हाँ.
बहुत ही बड़ा मतलब.
नहीं, बट अगर रोल एग्जिस्टिंग है विकास,
हाँ.
और किसी ने बस बोल दिया कि इसका रेज्यूमे देख लो,
हाँ.
बिकॉज मैच कर रहा है, जॉब ओपनिंग
There
है.
is still no obligation, honestly speaking.
Okay.
But yes, when you look at merit, the only difference that one or advantage one the referred candidate could have and usually tends to have is if there has been prior work history or experience where person has validated that yes, he was with me in that organization and he's a cracker of a person.
So you must, yeah.
Then you, so that validation helps you. In the second case, you're still making an assumption from a CV or an interview that this person will perform.
Yeah.
But here you've got a personal validation from someone, you're, like you said, a senior vice president.
Correct.
Who's already has credibility in your system.
Yeah.
Who's put in a word. Then you will have to and
You
may
will
have to
give
give
some weightage
you'll have
to
to
it,
give some
obviously.
weightage. That's been true about.
That is what I also meant. So that is what I'm saying. If somebody has been able to build that network for themselves, it will obviously give them that disproportionate outcome.
Correct.
Tomorrow, right?
Exactly.
Got it. Perfect. Last few questions for you, Vikas. I think before we wrap it up, this will be like a quick rapid fire, which will be a mix of jobs, hiring, salary, and all of what we have spoken about. But I want to start first with asking you that do you give more importance to somebody's resume or their LinkedIn profile when hiring?
Resume.
Okay. Tell me that when it comes to majority of the soft skills, communication skills, interpersonal skills, and let's say conflict resolution, what would be given most importance? Or what would be looked for sure?
Interpersonal skills more initially.
Overall?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Would you rather want to go ahead with a candidate who is extremely skilled in their core expertise, subject matter expert in whatever you're hiring for, let's say marketing, thorough marketing guy knows or girl who knows everything in their respective sphere, but not so good on the soft skills aspect, or someone who knows a bit of is a good people's person, has their interpersonal skills in space, but on the marketing angle, they need some work to be done?
I think if the core role is marketing, then the former for sure.
You'll go for the former? Okay. But what about the other aspects when they have to interact with clients and stuff? Would that not become a roadblock?
I think those are still areas where you can be coached and handled.
Got it. Understood. Also tell me, Vikas, that when it comes to looking at a job offer or when a candidate is receiving a job offer, what are the 3 most important things that they should look at or cross-verify before accepting any job offer from a company?
I think often candidates miss out on even checking basics like the location.
Okay.
But yes, the compensation which has been discussed and agreed upon is something that they should definitely look at. And in terms of specifics, in terms of the role.
Yeah. You mean like what their roles and responsibilities, etc. will be? Okay, got it. Any particular areas that they should be mindful of or looking at before they accept the job offer? I mean, which they should read through and be very sure of? Because a lot of times these documentation related stuff and related to these legal documents, like you said, half of the people, I don't think people actually even read through their job offers, honestly. So anything that you should be mindful of and definitely read through before accepting any job offer?
I think at the job offer stage, I think a couple of pieces which maybe should be of interest to them would probably be the notice period, the probation period, how those designed, because as much as the organization will want to have the net advantage there.
Correct.
Candidates should also be aware in terms of what are his lock-in periods and
exactly. Correct. Great. Okay. So, Vikas, also tell me that when you are looking at, let's say, hiring any candidate for, let's say, an HR role only within your team, okay, not for a separate functional hiring, what are a few skills that are extremely important when hiring an HR in your team on the soft skills side?
Soft skills side, I feel the advantage to have a conversation or build a connect with people across levels, and very specifically also with senior leaders, because often HR folks, irrespective of levels, need to interact with senior people, and if they feel cowed down or they feel hesitant, intimidated, then that's a disadvantage and kind of doesn't help them perform well in their role. So that is something I really like to gauge.
Got it. How many times, Vikas, have you told a candidate, I'll get back to you by EOD, and have actually gotten back to them by EOD?
Honestly, I never tell anyone I get back by EOD. I tell
HR
them,
and these jargons and the corporate terms that we have in place, right? Which is whether it is end of the day, circling back. I think the HR memes and jokes
will never end.
will never end. They'll never end. Okay. On that note, one last question for you, Vikas, before we let you go. I think this has been a super interesting, very insightful and fun conversation. But I think for all the folks who have stuck around with us till this point, are listening to, you, if they aspire to become HR professionals one day, which I'm assuming most of them are, and hence they are here, or they aspire to do something in this space, start something of their own. 20 years of your learnings, if you were to condense them into 3 most important things needed to be thriving in the HR industry, what would those be?
Great question. I think the first would be to be disciplined, be people centric is the second one. And third, I would say, in fact, be friendly with numbers as well.
Be friendly with numbers. Okay.
Yes. Because the combination of all this is what will make sure that you perform well in whatever area or arm of HR you are.
You are in.
Yes.
Got it.
A lot of people think that numbers is not really in the realm of HR, or HR
And
is
you
a
have
soft
your-
science.
Correct.
But frankly, it's becoming more and more data driven as we move forward. So apart from people, your number comfort should be very high.
Yeah.
And discipline is the starting point in my books for everything in life. So that is core.
Wonderful, wonderful. No, that's been amazing. And thanks, Vikas, for sharing that. I hope you had a great time. I think I had a ball of a time. There was so much that I got to learn and understand from the other lens and the other side of the table as well. And I really hope that everybody actually goes on to understand how does the entire hiring ecosystem actually work, and how do HRs look into this entire piece and space. Thanks, Vikas, once again. I think this has been a lovely conversation, and I hope that you had a great time too.
Absolutely wonderful time, and you're an awesome host.
pleasure.
Pleasure being here, and I'm looking forward to seeing this live.
Yes, definitely. Great. So for everybody who stuck around till this point, we'll be linking all of Vikas's social media handles in the description. Please do definitely check it out. And before you leave, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Dhairya Decodes channel. That's it for this episode. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.